Welcome to NucleCast, the official podcast of the ANWA Deterrence Center. Our host is Dr. Adam Lowther, co-founder and vice president for research at the National Institute for Deterrence Studies. The ANWA Deterrence Center is a 501c3 organization ensuring a broader understanding of the nation's strategic nuclear deterrent and its ongoing modernization. Thank you for listening and welcome to the show. The views of the host and the guests are their own.
Welcome back to NucleCast. Of course, we have a great episode for you today. I am your host, Adam Lowther, as always, and today our guest is Tomás Díaz de la Rubia. He is the Vice President for Research and Partnership at the University of Oklahoma. Welcome to NucleCast.
Thank you, Adam. Pleasure to be here.
Now, before we get into our discussion, you know, as an Alabama graduate, we're anxiously awaiting Texas and Oklahoma to come into the Southeastern Conference so they can understand what competitive football is like. Although Alabama did, you know, we're in a down year this year.
Yeah.
So if we, you know, any year where we lose a game is a down year.
Yes.
But
Yes,
so my one off-topic question, I guess, is how is Oklahoma? Are they doing anything special or significant to prepare for this move to the SEC?
Absolutely. We're 5-0, and we're going to beat Texas this weekend. So that's getting us ready. No, we're excited. We're excited about the move to the SEC. It's a big deal, and we're looking forward to beating everybody.
Yeah. Well, we'll certainly. It was a tough move for Texas A&M when they came, but we'll see how it turns out.
We'll see how it turns out. Yeah.
So, roll Tide. So now on to our real topic for today, and so you are the person at the university because you have an extensive background. You know, you spent 25 years at Lawrence Livermore running programs there, and we're at Deloitte. And so you went to Purdue, and now you're at Oklahoma. So you experienced in sort of running these efforts with the labs, the universities, doing work for the government. And Oklahoma has the Aerospace and Defense Institute, and you're doing some work for government. Can you help explain what it is? Now, it's not a UARC. And so one of the things, a university-affiliated research center that has a sponsor in the government, that's what UARCs are. So Georgia Tech Research Institute, my former place of employment, the National Strategic Research Institute, which was tied to University of Nebraska. And there's 15 UARCs, but y'all don't have a UARC, but you're still doing a lot of work for the government. So can you tell us about what you're doing? And then how does that work a little different from UARCs?
Yeah, no, I can tell you a little bit about, so the Oklahoma Aerospace and Defense Innovation Institute, OADI, was stood up here at the university about 2 years ago now, after I came. And really the impetus for that was the fact that, just about 20 minutes away from the Norman campus of the University of Oklahoma is Tinker Air Force Base. As you know, Tinker Air Force Base is home to the Air Force Sustainment Center. And about 45 minutes away is Fort Sill, which is home to two of the Army Future Command teams there on fires and missiles and long-range precision fires and missile defense. And so there's a tremendous military presence in Oklahoma. Aerospace and defense is the fastest growing sector of the economy in the state. It's only second in employment and revenue and to the energy industry in Oklahoma. And so we decided at the university that it was very important for us as a public flagship institution in the state of Oklahoma to focus on aerospace and defense. Okay. So we launched the Oklahoma Aerospace and Defense Innovation Institute with essentially two major goals. One was to partner with Air Force Sustainment Center and the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex within Tinker Air Force Base on advanced materials manufacturing issues, supply chain logistics, software engineering related to sustainment of our Air Force capability, right? As you know, we have B-52s have been around for 70 years. We have to maintain them. We have to sustain them. They have to keep flying. That all happens at Tinker. And so there are tremendous technical and scientific challenges, not unlike a stockpile stewardship in some ways. As systems age, how do you sustain them and maintain them in operating condition so that they're ready to go at any time, right? So that's a big area of focus for us. It has been growing. That partnership has been growing very fast. And then the second area of focus for us, which builds on a strength of the University of Oklahoma, is advanced radar systems. The University of Oklahoma has historically and continues today to be sort of the nation's premier institution when it comes to advanced weather prediction systems, particularly extreme and severe weather. Okay? We're home to the National Weather Center, and we have very large programs related with the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration and with NASA related to extreme severe weather and climate change. As part of those programs over the last 20 years, we built, what certainly is the premier academic center in the country when it comes to advanced radar. It turns out, you can easily imagine, that the advanced digital dual polarimetric phase array radar expertise that we have at the university has very interesting military applications as well. And so we have been working with services to build very large programs on the development of future next generation digital phase array radar for Department of Defense applications. And so it is not a UARC in the sense of being affiliated or having a baseline funding from any specific service, as GTRI or Johns Hopkins APL or others would have, but it is a center that has a specific focus on these two critical areas, particularly with the Air Force and the Navy, although expanding into the Army now, and that has some very large contractual obligations and programs with various elements of the Department of Defense. So
how do you operationally, how do you guys work in terms of how you interact with the government, how you contract in for a UARC, you have that special relationship, and that special relationship makes it much easier because you're a trusted partner. So how does that work for you guys?
It actually works pretty seamlessly. I mean, the Institute is organized to develop and build those contractual relationships with our various customers in the Air Force and around the services. And so we now have a contract vehicle that allows us to execute the work that we're doing on especially advanced radar systems. We have now a facility security clearance at the university, so we're starting to do, that was just awarded, we're starting to do clear work, we're building a SCIF, and so we're very committed to that mission, right? We are, again, as a public flagship university, we feel strongly that it is in our mission to help support the needs of our Department of Defense. And so that's why we're committed to this. And, we have a trusted relationship with our sponsors, and that's how we're operating.
So for many universities, sponsored research is really kind of an important part of
Yes.
what they do. Can you maybe talk about that, and what is that role, and why is it important?
Yeah, sponsor, for let's see, sponsor research is a critical component of any top-tier public or private university, right? It is part of the mission of a university. The mission, as I describe it, of the university is both to transmit and create new knowledge. Okay? Frankly, that's what differentiates, the American higher education system from many others around the world is that ability to do research, discover new things across all fields of research, of science, of engineering, of the humanities, of the social sciences, and communicate, disseminate that new knowledge, right, to the students and to the public. And so sponsored research, which is how we fuel the research enterprise at the university, is critical to the success and the education of our students, both undergraduate and graduate students, and preparing the next generation of leaders and citizens around the world. Right?
So one of the challenges I've had is I've worked on, as a professor and a school director, and when you're trying to develop specific programs, specific research that have an operational focus, that are not sort of basic science, and you have a customer that has very specific needs, like the Air Force, when they're talking about aircraft and specific radars for those purposes. And many faculty they most often don't have, a background, in the Air Force or in the Army. Or how do you help those faculty, prepare those faculty to understand that specific mission, and then to be more effective in whatever ways that they support and develop the capabilities required?
Yeah. No, look, you're right. I think of it as a coalition of the willing. Okay. Not everybody has an interest in doing, sort of more directed research, innovation work, that is sort of milestone driven and deliverable driven. But a lot of faculty do. And in fact, one of the things that we do, we hire junior faculty specifically around these topics that I was talking about. We hire U.S. citizens who often have a background, having worked at a national laboratory, having worked at a DoD lab, the FRL, or somewhere else, right? So we do bring people into the faculty that already come, with an alignment and a passion for sort of defense problem sets, right? We're enthusiastic about that. And then others join in as they see the opportunities. And certainly not everybody wants to do secure work, export control work, or classified work. But so we have to balance that. And again, it's a coalition of the willing, really. Plenty of faculty in a place like Oklahoma do. That was true at Purdue University as well. Right?
Yeah. So as you look forward, where would you like to go with your programs and your efforts in the years ahead? So if I'm sure you do plenty of strategic planning, I'm sure you're quite good at it. So as you strategically plan, what are you looking to accomplish?
Well, so, from the perspective of the Aerospace and Defense Innovation Institute, it's clear for us. We want to be in a position where, we're a premier institution for the Department of Defense when it comes to innovation around these areas that I mentioned before of, sustainment mission and, advanced systems, sensing systems across the entire spectrum, sort of radar-based on all kinds of applications across the spectrum of applications for the Department of Defense, right? And we see those two pillars as our, strategically where we can really bring something to the table that is unique, right? Particularly when it comes to advanced radar systems. From an academic perspective, where we can train students that come out with security clearances, ready to go serve, go work in the DoD or in the defense industrial base, and preparing that next cohort of leaders that the nation needs to support its defense needs.
Do you see, because for a flagship university of any state, much of their mission is workforce development. They want to train their graduates to go out, get high quality jobs, so that they can pay taxes and help the state grow. Are you finding that you're being successful in translating these relevant skills that come along with working with the government into jobs that stay in Oklahoma? Or are you seeing, and this is one of the challenges we had at Nebraska, is that Nebraska was a state losing population.
Yep.
And so I'd be curious to know.
No, that's a great question. That's a great question. Look, I mean, we are seeing that shift in real time right now. More and more of our graduates, particularly engineering graduates, are staying in the state of Oklahoma. In fact, the state of Oklahoma right now has one of the highest fluxes of incoming population in the country. Oklahoma City and the entire economic development enterprise around Oklahoma City is growing tremendously. It's a very attractive place in terms of cost of living and quality of life and so on and so forth. And with the growth of the aerospace and defense industry, particularly around Oklahoma City, Tinker Air Force Base alone can absorb every engineering graduate that we produce today, every year. And so there's a tremendous need in the state of Oklahoma for engineers. And so we're finding that as we get our security clearance, as we start training students in these critical missions, right, that the demand signal for jobs is tremendous. I mean, they can find employment, and they stay more and more so than just a few years ago here in the state of Oklahoma. So it's exciting. I mean, it's exciting to see the growth happening in this area, and companies moving in and so on.
Well, let me take a quick break, and we'll be right back, and we'll continue our conversation. This episode of Nuclecast is brought to you by the AMLA Deterrence Center, whose mission is to educate Americans about the nuclear enterprise and strategic deterrence. And we're back, and we're talking to Tomás Díaz de la Rubia, and we're talking about the University of Oklahoma's effort to partner with the Air Force, partner with the Navy, and the Army to develop capabilities that are relevant to the facilities like Tinker Air Force Base that are in the state of Oklahoma. And it's kind of, do you see what you're doing potentially as a model for other institutions around the country? Because, the University of Texas, they're tied to the Navy. They do a lot of sonar work. Georgia Tech Research Institute, they're the Army's cyber, because Army cyber's in Georgia. And so these partnerships and these UARCs, they're sort of looking in their sort of close region and saying, who's here and what do they need? And it seems like that's what you guys are doing. And with, the sort of the concern or the question I have is having an official UARC, which the DoD has said we're not going to add any additional UARCs. And so therefore that creates a contractual relationship that makes it a lot easier to do work. But from what I've understood from you, you're saying, hey, it's really not that hard after all. We're not really having any trouble by virtue of not having that UARC.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, when I first came here from Purdue 4 years ago, there was a lot of talk about UARCs, and I told everyone what you just said. I said, look, there's not a lot of appetite in the Department of Defense and in OSD for more UARCs. There's been a couple since. I mean, so it still happens, but I don't feel that that's necessarily the construct that is required to do the kind of work that we're doing. So you're right. I mean, we are very tightly coupled with Tinker Air Force Base because they're right here. We're tightly coupled with Fort Sill and the Army Futures Command building that relationship around those mission, particularly with Tinker, right, about the Air Force sustainment mission. But we're also, the other thing that we're doing, and I think this is where ultimately we may have, I think, the biggest impact. So we're taking our strengths, right, and we're saying, what are we really uniquely good at? What is it that this university can really differentiate itself from others around the country or around the world, that we can offer something that is relevant, critical to the mission, and that's in advanced radar. And so that is actually, when you have that sort of relevant capability and the willingness and the ability to do the relevant work, right, that the services need, it's not that hard to then get the contractual vehicles and the security clearances to go do it, right? So it's you have to be relevant to the mission, and if you are, it's a little bit like being at a national lab. If you're working on the mission, right, you're going to be okay. If you're focused on the strategic nuclear deterrent at Livermore and you're working on the stockpile or on NIF, you're going to be okay, right? If you are, trying to bring a rock, that nobody wants, then it's going to be hard, right? So we're trying to, rather than bringing a rock to the Department of Defense, we're saying, hey, you're asking us, right? You're looking at our capability. We're really good at this. You want to work with us, we'll work with you. So it's a different way of thinking about it, right? It's driving from the mission need as opposed to the technology push.
Right. So I have a question for you. So one of the challenges in trying to do new things at a university is there's usually a cost to doing something new, to developing a new program, to building a new school, to hiring new faculty that are, ex-lab guys. So because it's always, well, if you'll give us the money to do it, then we'll gladly do it. But if you want us to step out initially, that's sort of the hard part. So how have you guys, was there such demand that there was no investment, or were you able to get the university to make that investment? How did that sort of process work for you?
Yeah. No, I mean, you mentioned a little bit ago, you mentioned a strategy, right? When I came to University of Oklahoma back at the end of 2019, with the president, the new president at the time, Joe Harris, we set on creating a new strategic plan for the university that was needed. It really was needed. It's called the Lead On University Strategic Plan. It lays out the North Star for the University of Oklahoma, right? It lays out where we're going, what our ambitions are, and what are the key strategic verticals, areas of focus, right? We're going to grow and have an impact. From a research perspective, it lays out everything, but from a research perspective, it lays out 4 strategic verticals where we're going to invest and we're going to grow to have impact on society and train our students for that. And one of those 4 strategic verticals is aerospace and defense. So we made a conscious decision, right, that we were going to invest in creating a new institute. We're going to hire new faculty aimed at that institute. We created a strategy around aerospace and defense. We were incredibly fortunate to be able to hire retired Lieutenant General Gene Kirkland, who was the commander of Air Force Sustainment at Tinker. And so he came and helped us lead in that direction. We then brought in other people retired from the Air Force and others in the space of advanced radar, test and evaluation and things of that nature. And so we've been making a very conscious investment in building the capacity internally at the university to then go and work with the sponsors and say, yes, we're investing, right? Now let's bring in, the multi-$100 million programs that are going to fuel the enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always one of the big challenges. It's, for me as somebody who's stood up new schools and new programs, it's always, it's the biggest challenge is making that initial step and that initial investment.
Yeah, I mean, as you know very well from all that, when you do a strategic planning like that, the most important things is what you're not going to do, right? So the decision is once you decide, what you want to do, the hard part is what is it that you're not going to do, and so there are choices, right? And we made some very conscious choices when it came to aerospace and defense, and that's what has fueled the growth in the last few years.
And so, out of curiosity, the things you decided not to do, were those all the right decisions?
I hope so. I hope so. Time will tell.
Yeah, time will always tell.
And the other thing, frankly, when you do planning like this at a university, at a state university, you have to make sure that both your state legislature, the governor of the state, as well as your congressional delegation are aligned, right? That they see what you're doing as value added to the state, to the point before about graduating students that stay in the state. And so that was a big part of our analysis of our strategic planning and decision making. Was lots of conversations with state leadership, with the governor's office, with our delegation. And one thing I'll tell you that here in the state of Oklahoma, the support for the university building Aerospace and Defense Institute was universal. And in fact, not just the support in terms of go do it, but the financial support that we were able to get from the state and through our congressional delegation, has been spectacular. So I'm very grateful for that, right? Because so you have to align all the elements. You have to align the customer, right? Make sure you're aligned to their mission. You have to align your state legislature, the governor's office, the congressional delegation, and of course the leadership at the university. And then all these things come together. You can actually do something interesting.
So we're at that time in the show where I like to bring out my magic lamp. And of course, my magic lamp has a genie named Bob. And if I rub my magic lamp, Bob pops out, and Bob grants all guests 3 wishes related to the topic we've been discussing. So it is your turn to make 3 wishes that Bob will grant for you.
That's terrific. Well, I mean, look, the top, at the very top, right? For me, if I look at this, 5-10 years from now, I'd like to see that the University of Oklahoma has established itself on a sustainable way as a major training ground and innovation center for defense missions, right? For national security. And whether that's a UARC or not, it really doesn't matter that much. It's is there a mission relevant set of activities and customers that fuel the enterprise at the University of Oklahoma as one of the largest centers of defense innovation in the country, right? And we're training students, we're graduating students, are going right into the workforce, serving our national security from the day they graduate. So that's my top wish and desire, right? Along with that, of course, you want to you want to be able to attract really top faculty to come here. You want to build partnerships, with laboratories, build partnerships with other UARCs, build partnerships with other universities, right? So that you truly are, a leader, a national leader in the space. So I think those are, I don't know if that's 3, but that really is what drives me, right? What drives what we're trying to do is to get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, technically that's 2, but I was going to say that your 3rd cannot be dominance of the Southeast Conference
Now,
in the years
goes
ahead.
without
That's out of question.
that goes without saying. I mean, that's just so.
So
That's good,
if you were to give a bit of advice, let's suppose hypothetically that the listening audience today were all university presidents who were saying, you know what, we've got military bases in our state. We'd like to support and we'd like to get involved, and it's good for workforce development. It brings in research funding. It does all those good things. We want to do that. And you were to say, here's my wisdom and warning to you. What would be those things that you would, sort of cautionary tales or points of wisdom?
I mean, I think it's going back to what I said a little bit ago. I mean, I think number one, first and foremost, align with the mission. Okay, you have to ensure that you have the leadership and the faculty on the campus that are willing to do this, that are willing to align with the mission. If you do, then yes, you can build the partnerships with your local, and the reason why we started with Tinker is it was obvious, right? It's right here. I mean, wow, how can the University of Oklahoma not be working on, mission sets, problem sets relevant to Tinker Air Force sustainment? Then, okay. But then you can expand from there again in areas that are relevant where you have strength that is unique. Right. So identify those unique strengths in research, in technology, in engineering of the university. Find the intersection between those and the Department of Defense needs for the future, and then go for that. Right.
Yeah.
And then the final point, I think, again, is that it's really important to, especially for a public university, to align all of that with the governor's office, with the state legislature, and with the congressional delegation, because you need all those elements to come together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ultimately, finally, I mean, for any university out there, you have to make a tough decision, which is you have to decide that it's okay to work on, to do secure work, because not every student, not every faculty member can access that work.
Yeah.
You have to be very clear that, it's okay to be selective or, not allow, foreign nationals or, others to enter into that work. And that's a decision that only the president and a board of regents or trustees can make, right?
Yeah.
Some universities, as you know very well, do not. They do not do export control. They do not do classified work. In fact, many forbid it in their bylaws. Right? The entire system of the University of California does not allow for export control or classified work on their campuses. Yeah, and they have reasons for that, and that's okay. So you have to make that decision, right? And be very conscious about it. So that would be my advice.
Well, thanks. This was informative, and we covered ground that this is a topic we don't normally talk about, and so it's interesting to see how one university in Oklahoma is out there trying to contribute in a way that we don't normally think about. Well, I mean, we think about Northrop building a weapons system, or we think of we talk a lot about what the labs are doing and what the big contractors, but a university looking to its local environment and saying, here's how I think we can contribute. And of course, for those of us that listen, the NucleCast family, we of course care about the B-52 and re-winging it and re-engineing it and all of the systems upgrades that have taken place that have, a lot that's been done at Tinker.
Yes, that's right.
So
that's exactly right.
Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of NucleCast. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And love interacting with ANWA and all that you do in support of our nuclear deterrent and the advocacy that you bring. So it's been a pleasure to be on the podcast today. Thank you.
And thanks to you, the listeners, and we'll see you next time on NucleCast. Well, an interesting conversation. Part of what I was really kind of interested in, having spent time at a university-affiliated research center, a UARC, is how do universities that don't have UARCs, because UARCs have special contractual relationships with the sponsor. So for NSRI, that was with StratCom. And that allows you, lots of freedom, and you're a trusted partner. So you can do more. But if you're not a UARC, how do you go about doing all of those, especially classified things that the Air Force or the Navy or the Army or the Marine Corps might want? And so sort of talking through that was a really interesting discussion for me. And then how do you grow? Because, this is a significant investment for a university to say, hey, we want to do this. And so how do you go about building that funding? And part of what he made clear was that, hey, you've got to have the university president, the board of regents, the congressional delegation, the governor. You got to have everybody on board. And so that was pretty interesting to just see. And of course, for the University of Oklahoma, they were able to do that. And so, they're seeing some success out of what they've decided to move out on. So it was an interesting conversation. Hopefully you'll find it interesting as well.
This has been a production of the ANWA Deterrent Center, a 501c3 that seeks to educate key decision makers, stakeholders, and the public to ensure a broader understanding of the nation's strategic nuclear deterrent. Our executive producer is Kimberly Chamberlain, and this episode has been engineered and mixed by David Crumpel. Help us grow our followers by sharing it and follow the show on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at NucleCast.